Dear students, we already know about what is demand in the previous video. So today or in this video we are going to studying about determinants of demand, because there are so many factors to determine the demand or influence the demand. So the demand for a product and therefore its sales depend upon a number of factors. These factors are economic, social as well as political factors. It would however be impossible in most demand studies to include all factors. Nevertheless, there are few factors which influence on so many products. In that, first one is general factors, second one is additional factors, means luxury goods and durables, on the basis of luxury goods and durables. The third one is additional factors, like market demand. So let us know about what is general factors. There are 4 points or 4 factors. First one is price of the product or price of the commodity. The most important factor affecting the amount demanded is the price of the commodity. A consumer usually decides to buy with consideration of price. A rise in the price of the commodity will construct the demand of commodity and vice versa. Normally, price has a negative effect on demand. Negative effect on demand. So that's why price will determine the demand. Price will determine the demand. This theory. So second one is taste and preference and habits. Demand for many products depends on the person's taste, habits and preferences. For instance, the demand for a product like ice cream, chocolates and so on depends on individual's tastes, and demand for coffee, tea, cigarettes and so on is a matter of habits. That's why tastes, habits and preferences are determining the demand. Sometimes habits will determine the demand more, and sometimes preferences will determine the demand more. And next is income, consumers' income. This is very important factor influencing demand is the income of the consumer. Normally, income bears a positive effect on demand, like an increase in consumers' income leads to an increase in the demand of various commodities. I repeat, an increase in consumers' income leads to an increase in the demand of various commodities. So there is a positive relationship between income and demand. And in the general factor, the last one is prices of the related goods. Demand for a commodity not only depends on the price of that particular commodity, but also on the price of other related commodities, such as substitute or complementary commodities. For example, in the case of substitutes like tea or coffee, a rise in the price of coffee will increase the demand for tea and vice versa. And vice versa. In the case of complementary goods like petrol and car, a rise in the price of petrol is followed by a reduction of demand for car. So it clearly says that the price of the related goods will determine the demand. Will determine the demand. Apart from these, there are so many factors are there like wealth of the consumer, government policies. Uh, government policies will determine the demand sometimes, and climate conditions will determine the demand, state of businesses and availability of consumer credit will also determine the demand, and last but not least, advertisement will determine the demand. So these are all uh, factors to determining the demand. In additional factors, there are like luxury goods and durables, like consumers' expectation of future price will also determine the demand, and consumers' expectation of future income also vary the demand. So that's why means the expectation sometimes a consumer's expectation uh, will reduce the demand or maybe increase the demand. So totally it will vary the demand. That's why it is one of the factors to determine the demand. And additional factors like market demand, in that population is also one of the factors to determine the demand. For example, India has a huge population uh, rather than America. So that's why India has huge market to the goods and services. So India will create a huge market or a demand for the goods and services sometimes. So that's why the population will vary the demand. Next one is social, economic and demographic distribution of consumers. This is also one of the factor of determining the demand. Our country's standard of living will determine the demand sometimes, not sometimes, it always. So that's why it is also one of the factor to determine the demand. Totally what we understand is that so many factors will determine the demand or vary the demand. Not only a price or income like that, so many factors are there to determine the demand.